Oh, we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Bodega Cats Comics, where we are here to do what you all do, but maybe at a different level with a different flavor. Because in the last few years, we've seen people speculate, we've seen people argue, we've seen people mad at CGC, CBCS, and any other company that hasn't gone the way they wanted to. But hey, if you're a creator, judge your creation. If other people are doing stuff, pay for it or shut up. But we want you all to join us and just, if possible, if your neighborhood hasn't been gentrified, grab a quarter water, sit with us as we discuss what we believe is most important about comic books, and that is the story. So stay tuned for the intro, and we'll be right back.
Bodega Cats Comics.
Meow.
That was weird. All right.
It's the pilot episode. It's the pilot episode. No pilot is perfect.
That was good.
I just realized how weird that was. Like 3 grown dudes, 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, and kitty photos and costumes.
One is in a dark room.
Not that dark yet. No, we're good. As you can see by the name tag, my name's Vic, and you can find me on Instagram as Be Unbrokeable. And what do I like? The 3 C's: comic books, candles that smell like bacon, and catfishing. Not with my hands in muddy water, but I like to steal identities and go online and trap people. So those are the things I love. Who's up?
I don't know how to follow that.
I don't know how to follow that.
Right. I will say though, I come from a place that is super gentrified, so I don't have a quarter water. I actually got some dark roast cold brew, and I'm covering it because I can't. I don't know if we can endorse products without being sued. So we can probably figure out what it is though, but I'm not. You know what I'm saying? So that's me. No, I'm not coffee. My name is I go by Joselito. That'll probably change because I don't fucking know. We'll see how I feel after today's episode. New Yorican by birth. I always like to say the hellmouth of Sunnydale raised me in high school. I'll probably be watching. I've probably seen like every single episode of Law and Order SVU at least 20 times. It's actually on right now. Yeah, I don't know. I'll make up some other shit. I may give you my Instagram. I don't know about that. We'll see.
All right, fair enough. And I mean, I'm not gonna say everybody know me because I don't got a big channel like that, but I do know some people, I guess. But my name is Los. Everybody knows me as Los. So Los Comics Journey. Been on YouTube for a few years now, and done a few videos here and there. Went live a few times, mostly doing like unboxing and stuff like that. But I've done some collaborations with other YouTubers and similar fashion, done some reviews and things like that for some comics. But mainly like unboxings and stuff like that, and just having a good time talking about comics. So that's what I'm all about. So here we are.
Oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be awesome. I made a few YouTube videos in the past. I think I have about 17 posted, and I only have 12 views. Y'all do the math on that one. But why are we here? We really wanted to get some time to introduce ourselves to the folks out there in the comic book community, as well as, talk about comics. And we came up with a really good concept for this first episode, and the episode is going to be called Origins. And Joselito, is that how you say it? Joselito? Is the person who came up with the concept. So Jose, can you share that with us?
So actually I decided midway through the first episode, my name is Miguel. So I think the 3 of us were thinking about, as we were starting to build this thing out, and what this would look like for us as comic book fans and lovers of the art and the medium, just thinking about our pilot episode, what this would look like. And we thought, what better way to launch our pilot than by telling how we all came to be, lovers of the medium in the first place. So sort of our origin stories, our respective origins.
I had to. I'm sorry.
It's like, I lost my train of thought. All right, you know what? So
our respective origins. You got it. You good.
No, I don't. I feel like that. Is this like, am I like, I don't know, Angela Yee at Hot 97? Like, y'all just gonna keep fucking with me? Like, Is what y'all gonna be doing. So wait, no, backtrack. So no, this is our origin story, and you know in essence, the comic book, the first comic book that got us on our journeys.
Yeah.
And so that's our show for tonight, talking about the one. What was it that got us hooked on this lifelong path? So
Awesome. Los, what do you think about that?
meow.
No, I mean, I dig it, right? You know, I mean, we've all had that first book that pretty much got us into this hobby, right? I mean, there always has to be one thing that gets you into something, right? If you get hooked onto anything, right, there's always like that one first thing or whatever. And you know, for us, obviously, it's comics, and that's what we want to talk about, right? Where that first comic book that just piqued your interest and was like, you know what, that was either pretty crazy or that was just shit, and I'm like, maybe I want to read something else or whatever, but at least you wanted to continue on, right? It at least piqued your interest, and it was like, okay, I want to go further with this, right? So that's what we're here for. You know, who's going first with their book? How we want to do this? But
Let's talk about how we're going to do it. We'll give everybody the rules, and we'll let them know what's happening. So we're each going to get 5 minutes to talk about the book. We're going to show a few panels from a slideshow that we've created. And when we get to the 2-minute mark, you will see a 2-minute warning come across the screen. And I'm an impeccable timekeeper. Trust and believe that. When you get to the end of your 5 minutes, you will get cat slapped. Once you get cat slapped, you will have to get out, and the outro music will play as if you are at the Oscars. And I will increase the volume for every second you continue to speak. So I was lucky to do the intro. Jose, you told us what we were going to be doing. You came up with the concept. So I think it's only fair that Los starts the journey for us tonight.
All right.
Awesome.
So my book is, I mean, if anybody has seen any of my videos prior, they've known that I talk about this book a lot, and it is Wolverine miniseries #1. So this right here is the book that was given to me by my uncle, and it was essentially the first book that I've ever had, right? I never really knew anything about comics. He was a big comic collector, and this was my first book. And, just based on the cover alone, I was intrigued by this, being 12, 13, whatever the hell it was. Yeah, I mean, you see this and you're like, holy crap, I need to read this. So read this book, and the story was very adult. It was something that, again, I've never really seen before, and it was just that first read of like what is happening here. I did like the fact that it was like a #1 issue, so at least the story was being told right from the beginning. So that kind of like helped me lead into it, even though I believe I wasn't even sure if this was like this guy's first appearance or anything like that. I really didn't know anything about it. So like going through it, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm reading the story, and they give you tidbits of the character, who he is, kind of deal, but not a straight origin. So like reading into it, and he's kind of traveling around and stuff like that, and I think there's like a first panel that kind of like caught my eye was he's basically talking about like hunting down a bear, which was kind of like interesting. Like, all right, he's like checking it out and stuff, and panel was pretty cool. He's fighting this big ass bear, and so you see the first thing he does, and it's the first time like you saw him remove his claws, and he's kind of talking about the backstory of how like a little bit of how like he got his claws and his skeleton and stuff like that. Having adamantium, and I was like, all right, and then he just like slices off the damn bear's arm, and like, well, okay. So that was like kind of like shocking to me again as a kid reading this. So it was kind of like fascinating, and then it kind of takes you on a little journey of him, traveling to Japan and stuff like that, and kind of going to see essentially like the love of his life already. He kind of goes back, he hears some stories about her, some things happening, so he has to kind of go back, and when he gets there, he kind of has like some run-ins and stuff like that, and he essentially finds out that she's married, picks up this guy's her husband, and I don't, again, at the time, I didn't know this character. So I'm like, oh man, this guy must be massive, right? Like he just picked this guy up and he's like, foot off the ground and like, holy crap, like it's a big dude. So I'm like, wow, pretty strong or whatever. Obviously later on finding out his real origin that the guy's only 5'4", which is pretty funny because I'm like, Jesus, how small is this guy that he can pick him up off the ground that high? Which is pretty damn funny, like just thinking back on it. So I thought that was like another interesting little like piece there, going from the first time reading it to like kind of rereading it later on in life, knowing how small he actually is, which is pretty funny because I thought he was like, a giant. And then, going to like the end of the story, it kind of like leaves you off on a cliffhanger because it is a miniseries, which again, I didn't know it was a miniseries. I didn't know how many issues was in this. It's a number one issue, but it definitely left me off where I want to continue on and read more. Right? The story was intriguing to me, especially being a kid and kind of having these a more adult story. Right? His ex-girlfriend, the love of his life, her husband is actually beating her and stuff like that. So like she's getting abused and stuff, and it was something a lot for a kid to take in, and like I said, it just kind of left me at the end with just wanting more of the story. Right, he's in the alley, he's kind of hurt after getting into a battle with his ex lovers, like father and stuff like that, and kind of beats the hell out of him and stuff like that. These guys are in the alleyway, they think they're gonna actually take him out, and you can see that I'm pretty sure he either cut off their arms or whatever because they just lost all their weapons. So obviously he beat the hell out of these guys, and then it kind of leaves off from there, and there's more to the story. So I definitely wanted to like read more, but it wasn't until later on in life when I can actually get more of these books, because I just didn't have the money at the time to get the other ones. But I did end up reading the rest of them. But this is the one that kind of got me into reading, and from here I just started reading more and more, Spider-Man, X-Men, and everything else and stuff from this. But yeah, this is the one book that started off for me.
Yeah. Ooh, you ended 10 seconds before the cat slap. You wrapped that shit up real good. Thank you. So for the audience, yeah, everyone, we all decided to read each of our origin stories, and thank you for sharing that, Los, for sure. Any thoughts on the book, Jose?
Yeah, you know what? I think this is the Wolverine that I enjoyed reading as a kid. I think about Wolverine nowadays, and he's everywhere. He's completely oversaturated the market, the Marvel universe, I think. But this is the Wolverine that I think was written in a way that he was human. He had a healing factor that was not like godlike. He had a healing factor that he could still get killed, right? I distinctly recall an issue of Uncanny X-Men. I think it was like issue number, I think like 200 and maybe it was 197, 198, but it was the first appearance I think of Lady Deathstrike. No, I'm sorry. It's the one. No, I'm thinking of the one where he was crucified by the Reavers in Uncanny X-Men 250, I think it was, and his healing factor was failing him, like he was dying. You know what I'm saying? And so it was it was not issue 198. Yeah, and so thank you, producer. Yeah, but this was the Wolverine that I think was, relatable, or in the sense that he was human. He wasn't like some bigger than life person. He could get killed. The stakes were still high for him, right? Mm-hmm. Also, Claremont clearly had a love affair with Japanese culture, because like it carried over into like other usages of the culture in things like the Acts of Vengeance storyline, when he made Psylocke Japanese, right? Yeah. Now there was, and then in 2020 there was this whole movement to make Psylocke white again, right? And so like he had a love affair with this type of stuff, and it shows up. I also love the fact that back then in the 80s, comic books, like I read this one, rereading it, and it took me a good, 20 minutes to get through it. It was verbose, it was wordy, it was all the things that I remember about comic books, whereas nowadays they can, I might be able to finish one in like 10 minutes, right? Or if that, because there's not a lot of dialogue in comparison. And the panels, you read them, you have to take everything in. So the panels always complemented the artwork, I thought. So, yeah.
That's dope. I'll share on you. And you mentioned like Wolverine now versus Wolverine then. I don't think I know this Wolverine.
Yeah.
But I do wish this comic was in black and white because it feels gritty. He feels like a I don't give a damn detective. Like just at the beginning of it, no one hired him. He's like, I used to be a spy. I am an X-Men. Now I'm killing a bear in Canada. And then he gets home and he's like, I'm jumping on another international flight to go somewhere no one wants me, and they're gonna have to deal with that. So
wait,
like this bear.
Yeah.
Is this also the first appearance of Mariko? His long, because I think of her and I always flash back to Uncanny X-Men like 170. I'm forgetting the issue number, when Wolverine and Mariko are about to get married and she like stands him up at the altar, but it's actually Mastermind who manipulates the whole thing. And so she says to him something like, goodbye, Logan-san, you are not, something like, I can't marry you because you're not deserving of me, or some shit like that. And like, it was, the whole thing was orchestrated by Mastermind. And as she leaves, like, Wolverine's back is turned to the X-Men, and the reader can see his face, and he's got this single tear that's reminiscent of like that the Native American commercial was like, he sees the pollution and he's like crying. It's the single tear coming down his face. It's like that. And I always think of Mariko in that context. So to see her as like her first appearance, I was like, oh
yeah, that's the cover that has the photograph of them, but it has the samurai sword. Like ripped.
Yeah, no, so it was that. And then like just going through again, the whole piece, you said he didn't have the godlike healing factor, which was apparent. Like he's getting his ass whooped with a wooden sword and he really gets knocked out. And even against his claws and everything. So it also shows that he's not as sharp as he is in supposedly modern day, right? Like I'm the easy, the best one to go to. I'm the killer. I could get anybody in 2 strikes. But the only person he did that to was a bear in this, and I was really interested. And then, there's this other element where he still taps into that animal nature that we always see. There's a few dogs that come up to him as he's about to scale a building, and he just stares at them, and they walk away. He's like, the one thing that makes me mutant is my healing factor, and this and this. But he doesn't speak to the other element or where that came from. So like, if you don't realize who he was in the other stories prior to this, you probably don't know his animal nature. Right. So how does that even play a factor into something? How did he hone that? So it was real interesting. And then at the end, again, he murders like 4 guys in a second. So it clearly like illustrated this other person's level of mastery and talent against him when he was poisoned and fought the person, and this time he was like knocked out and fought the person. So it was overall a good storyline. I wish there were a few different changes. I didn't see him smoking a cigar. I feel like, was he smoking anywhere? He should have been smoking a
cigarette at a couple times. He had a cigarette.
I just wanted him to have it in his mouth the whole time, like always.
Yeah, he didn't have the cigar though.
And I heard Mickey Rourke from like in Sin City. That's the voice that I was reading this in the entire time, because
it was Frank Miller. So, that's why the black and white seems
why it's necessary. You know. Cool. We did want to make a cat system, but it is our pilot episode. But this is how I felt when I was reading this. What? You like that one? Yeah, I'll give it to you again.
You got 3. You got 3.
That's just smile. Yeah, just that way when I was reading it. All right, who's next?
I guess I'll go next. We can save yours for last, Victor, because I've
saved mine for last. There's a lot of commentary about mine, apparently. Let's move to yours.
So, all right, this is this is the comic book that stood out to me as a kid. I distinctly recall getting this one from like a 99-cent store. It was a bin in the 99-cent store, and it was like a 3-pack, so you could get like a pack of, or maybe it was like 3 or 5 pack comic, and it was like for a few dollars. And I opened this one not knowing what the hell it was, but I liked the cover and I thought it was, pretty dope. And it said Demon Bear. I'm like, ooh, and there's like, right? What is that? Prior to this, I had only been familiar with the X-Men by way of the old arcade game. Shout out to that classic, right? And the old X-Men, Pride of the X-Men videotape, where it has Kitty Pryde, who's like, mutants and humans must live together, or whatever the hell she says, right? In that stupid one episode tape. So this was dope to me, and I wasn't familiar with the New Mutants, and I read it, and I think the good thing now, having read it again, that I didn't appreciate at the time because it was the first part of a multiple chapter storyline, is that it ended on a cliffhanger. But what I realize now as an adult is that it also is, I think, a good starting point for anybody who did not follow New Mutants prior to jump on board, because it was the first issue drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz. Los, am I saying that correctly? Because I was mangling that man's name,
There
right?
was a lot of hard consonants in there.
Mama, right? So it was the first issue drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz, and he ended up doing like 13 issues over the course of his run. It also introduced some various subplots. We had the first appearance in like Shadow of the alien warlock. I love this scene. So we discussed this before we got on air. Like, Vic was like, "This is random as hell," and I'm like, "I love it." Right? It's like, this like random star is like moving, and then it's like emerging from the star is like this, like, I don't know, futuristic sci-fi figure. And I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with the story of the bear, right? Give me the bear. I want the bear, not this thing. But it sets it up, right? It's like, you talk about, I think Magus, this is who it is. The guy's name is Magus. It turns out he's Warlock's father. But he's saying, run as far as you like, Warlock, but I'm going to find you, or some shit like that. Come to realize, like, his own dad is trying to kill him. But they don't get into that this first issue. They just set it up, right? The other subplot that happens in this issue, we meet for the first time, I believe, in present day Marvel continuity, the first present day appearance of Rachel Summers, the alternate future daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey, right? She appears in this timeline. The officers mistake her for a drug addict. She's like, "Hey, officer, I don't go like that. Okay, get out of my case," right? And she tries to approach Xavier's school. She knocks on the door. Ileana approaches her like, "Bitch, what do you want?" And Rachel runs away like, "Oh my God, that white girl just completely scared the shit out of me." But Ileana's the same age now as she was when she died in my future. I'm so confused. I was confused reading it as a kid. I was like, what is going on here? But it sets up some subplots that you don't really see nowadays. And I think back then you had writers like Chris Claremont, who was on the X-Men for like 17 years. And he was able to set up these moving parts for stories that he would revisit at a later time. So that was that. The other thing, of course, the main spectacle of the issue was the Demon Bear, right? So in this issue, Danielle Moonstar, aka Mirage, is having dreams of this demonic bear that is following her. And earlier in the New Mutant series, I think as early as issue number 3, I believe, and then later the issue before this one, issue number 17, we see that the bear has been approaching Danielle in like the shadows or in like some cloudy, shapes, and saying, "I'm coming for you." And this is the first time that we actually see their confrontation. First of all, this image right here is iconic. Look at this shit, right? Like Danielle, she goes out into the woods. She's like, "The bear's after me, but I got to be a strong, independent woman, right? And I got to stand up to this thing, right? And be like, yo, Destiny's Child told me to like stand up to you, right?" And they have this like battle. And it's a very short one, right? She's not prepared, but she said, "I'm going to do it anyway." And then what happens next? She thinks she kills the bear. The New Mutants hear her scream, particularly Wolfsbane and her terrible Scottish accent. No disrespect to Scottish folks, but I think that Chris Claremont did not do y'all justice. You know what I'm saying? And so they all run out into the woods like, "Oh my God, what is happening? My lassie," right? And so they see her in the woods. Next slide, brother. Like,
oh, my bad.
No, you good. I mean, look at this. It ends on a cliffhanger. Is she dead? I mean, Wolfsbane is in tears. Sam Guthrie is even old enough to carry a rifle. Like, he's got a rifle in his hand, right? I think that's Ileana. Ileana is very like in true Ileana fashion. She's just staring at that shit. Like, look, I grew up in limbo in a hell dimension. I've seen far worse than this. Like, this ain't nothing, right? Look at this shit. And it was the first issue that really drew me in. Like, holy shit! Like, what did I just read between this alien and this like androgynous redhead who is a drug addict? Like, what is happening? And then this woman fighting this bear. It was great. It was great. Set up a lot of shit for future learnings issues. And then I think, for me, it got me started from there. It just kind of snowballed. It was this issue. It was then, and I wouldn't find out the conclusion of the Demon Bear saga for many, many more years until I was able to buy it on my own. But I stumbled across the New Mutants special edition #1, drawn by Art Adams. Amazing artwork. It was also the first part of the 2-part X-Men Asgardian Wars. And it's kind of snowballed from there. So I attribute my journey to this single issue, the artwork, the storyline, the lives at stake, the bear. right?
The bear.
The bear,
There it is for the folks again.
the demon bear.
There it is.
The
It's
demon
so funny. Like everyone hears the noise, everyone hears the screaming in this panel right now as you were sharing it. I don't see footsteps for some folks, and that bothers me. I
Yeah,
don't
so
know
we
why.
see Wolfsbane's footsteps. I see maybe Samuel Guthrie's right behind him. I see Sunspots. I see Ileana's. I don't see Danielle's.
Yeah. And then the last panel right before this one, everybody's in the same position, like they're next to each other. So
Yeah,
why
yeah.
do you
Oh, yeah,
have
that's right. Because they were all running. They were
Yeah,
running
so they all
towards
run
her.
toward
Yeah.
no one. Yeah, Danielle's. They're not there. It bothers me.
Yeah.
Los, what'd you think when you read it?
So for me, not have read pretty much any of like the New Mutants. I mean, not for a while anyway. Especially some of the early issues. It was for me. It was kind of all over the place. Just because like they're talking about some things in the past, like some characters, and I don't know any of the characters, so I'm like, they're mentioning things of like these characters. I'm like, okay, I guess they know the X-Men or they, whatever. So I'm like, okay, that's fine or whatever. I mean, it is the 18th issue, right? So like you would expect that to not have all the information. Then the whole Warlock side, epilogue thing, that was like out of left field. And I was just like, oh, what the okay. I mean, I get it, right? I mean, I know it was a setup for like something else, because obviously you can tell it was some side story and another character that was probably going to be introduced later on. But
Carlos
again,
is reading that page looking like this.
Yeah, pretty much. But it was one of those things where probably if you would have read a couple of earlier issues, maybe there would have been some mention of this Warlock character, and then you would have kind of known why that was there. But reading it in that order, you're just like, oh, all right, sure. We'll get to that when we cross that bridge later. So that was a little, oddballish. But then getting back and like seeing like the Demon Bear, seeing like the little, like you were saying, like in earlier clips, you see like his eyes in the shadow, like red eyes in the shadow and stuff like that. When she basically was like, I can't tell anybody what's going on. It's my my thing, to my cross to bear kind of deal. I can't get any help from anybody because that whole like Native American kind of like tribal thing was like, hey, you need to battle these things yourself in order for you to do whatever to the tribe and stuff like that, to like prove yourself to the tribe kind of deal. She had to do it on her own, right? She couldn't get help from anybody because obviously going to Ileana, right? Even though she was saying that she can't really fully control her powers, but we know that she's strong as shit, right? Obviously when somebody says they can't control their powers, it's probably because they're strong as hell and they don't know what the hell is going on. So she probably could have went to her and, probably could have taken care of this thing with no problem. But again, that pride side and like, hey, I need to do this for myself kind of deal ultimately led her to, bleeding out in the snow. But that bear scene definitely was, kind of iconic. You see that and you're just like, Jesus, like, what the hell? Like that thing is massive. Like you've never seen a bear like that. Obviously it's a demon bear or whatever. So yeah, it's going to be, 20 feet tall or whatever. But that was just like crazy. That like kind of stood out, that panel. And, but it did pique my interest in definitely like reading it, that whole, because it didn't say like the end or it was like to be continued, or so it was like, okay, maybe she pulls out of this or whatever. It's like, who knows what happens and stuff. And obviously there's another aspect to it, but yeah, it left me on at least a cliffhanger note where like, you know what? Yeah, I could read the rest of these, right? And the artwork was, great. And obviously it's Bill Sienkiewicz. So you're going to get these, sharp lines and everything. Like he has his own distinct style. Like when you see a Bill Sienkiewicz cover or his artwork, you know who it is. Like it's clear who it is. But yeah, no, it was an interesting read to say the least. Again, not knowing the whole backstory kind of like threw off a little bit, but it still left me intrigued enough to say, you know what, let me read issue 19 or whatever, at least to try to see how this ends. If because obviously the Demon Bear just whooped her ass after she thought she got him by sticking a arrow through his mouth. And he's like, yeah, that ain't gonna do it. that ain't gonna do it, girl.
Isn't enough. Y'all both had books with arrows that did not kill bears. So just to tie that together, because Wolverine, when he was going for his bear, somebody struck him with poison and he killed the whole family.
He just went
and then
crazy.
this bear, then this bear kills a whole family and continues to, and arrows don't work. But yeah, like you said, it was a good read, and I think one of the things that was funny for me was I was trying to pay attention to these smaller details because I sometimes didn't know what was going on. Right, you speak to the part with Warlock and his father that came out of nowhere, and I was like, did this PDF I download just like go to a different story? Like, did I get played? This is not the article I was supposed to be reading or the book I was supposed to be reading. Then I went through. And then I start thinking about physics and science when Cannonball and Magma are like kind of flirting in the danger room, and he's like not controlling his powers, and she goes to like a really high level of heat intensity. And then he catches her because he sees her falling, and she's like, "Bro, why'd you do that? I could have melted the floor."
Right.
It's the danger room. Like, you shouldn't be able to melt the floor here because you would melt the entire room all the time. So when can you and when can't you do that?
But it's a practice room, so I'm sure Xavier had Xavier had protocols. He knew like how much heat the danger room could withstand.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
But how did she know that? Right? Like, plus again,
practicing.
Yeah, the scene that he Professor X gets bucked at is just blam right across there's that one split panel, and I'm like, when is this happening?
Yo, seriously.
Like,
I was like, does that happen in the future? Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. And it was tough for me because he was up on like the second floor peeping out the window, it looked like. And then the shot still pushed him back so hard. So what kind of bullet was that? Where was the sniper? I don't know. I feel like he would have precautions.
But the bullets were straight too.
Yeah,
you didn't see it at an angle from up or down. It was like straight across.
Yeah, so I'm looking at all these things, and then
it's again, the future. You ain't even got to worry about it. It's happening years from now, so don't worry about it.
I'm cool with that. But listen, this was a confusing story for me, so I had to dive into other things. I was paying attention to details, so I have something to speak to you all about because I've learned my book was the trashiest of them all.
But I will say, you know what? To your points, to your and Carlos's points about the about like diving in issue 18, like what's happening. I think one thing Claremont did though a lot back then, especially like you could pick up any issue of Uncanny X-Men, and it was almost the same. Where Claremont would say like issue 200, and he'd still say Storm is a mutant with the ability to control the weather. Like he would still say this all the time, and he said this in the issue as well, where he said Ileana is a mutant and she's a sorceress. She can, she rules the entire dimension of limbo. And, and I think even Mirage said, I have the ability to manifest people's fears. Like she said that, right? They talk about Cannonball's ability. So Claremont, one thing I think he tried back then to make every issue approachable to a brand new reader. And so, I think my frustration as an adult reading all these issues is like, after a while, they seem repetitive because he's saying the same thing every issue. Like, oh, it's like, look at Psylocke. I keep bringing up Psylocke, but like every time Psylocke used her powers in the 90s, she always said her psychic blade was the focused totality of her telepathic abilities. She always said that in every issue. She popped that thing. She's like, it is the focused totality of my telepathic abilities, because that was Claremont's way of letting the audience know who she was and what she could do. He did that in this issue as well. So I thought that's a good, for a jumping on point, it was helpful to me because I knew in one panel, I knew that Ileana was a mutant and she was a sorceress. I was like, oh, word. Also, her abilities come into play against the Demon Bear in the next couple issues. So and the way Sienkiewicz draws Ileana's powers against the Demon Bear, amazing. That's all I gotta say. Like their final battle with the Demon Bear when Ileana brandishes her soul sword.
Yo, I would love to hear about that when we go through that book. It'd be amazing. I think we should all continue to read the story arc because it's the most confusing one. I need to get there. I need to see this. I'm not like trying to clown right now. I need to see it.
Because I don't but so the thing is, here's the thing. The thing is with Claremont was known for some trippy shit. So the next issue, a couple things happen to some random people in the hospital, and you're like, wait, this is kind of problematic. But that's what Claremont was known for. He was known for writing some problematic shit, but he also wrote some good stories. And then the way the story concludes with the Demon Bear, there's a reason why when Danielle faces the Demon Bear in this issue, there's a reason why when she manifests what the Demon Bear is afraid of, it turns out it's Danielle. And she's like, why is he afraid of me? It's because of what Danielle knew as the key to defeating the Demon Bear. Anyway, but yeah, so good shit.
I think it's really good writing. I think both books were written pretty well. And there's this one moment, and I wanted to focus on the danger room, seeing that I knew that by the time I got to the end of the book, she was going to die. Because she was like, oh, yeah, I'm here, and it's pointless for me to be here because none of my abilities are in physical strength. So when I saw her going to fight this bear, I was like, she dead. Yep, deader than dead. Like, there's no way. Like, that wasn't the foreshadow of it.
Yeah.
Right. And plus, again, the You see a cover like that, you like, this person's gonna die. This
Right.
is already an homage to them. Like this is a tribute. Yeah.
I also, one last thing before we jump into your book, Vic.
Yeah.
Danielle was one of those mutants who, like you said, her power, especially back then, was not physical, and it was barely psychic, because it's like, what the fuck do you do with that, right? And so, you know, the writers, for folks like her, they always found creative ways to like get them like a power up, or to get them like, you know, more physical in combat, right? It's the same thing with there's another New Mutant who appears later on. His name is Cypher, and he has the mutant ability to decipher any language. That's his ability.
Yeah.
And like, he's the most useless character in the field. Like, he has no and so he's always like, he always stuck by Warlock for protection, because in the field that motherfucker couldn't do shit.
Yeah.
And so you see back then writers who try to find creative ways to keep characters like Mirage and Cypher and even Psylocke. Back then, during the Australian era, Psylocke wore an entire bodysuit of armor, because it was like, okay, we can get her engaged now in battle because she has a protection, right? It's just interesting how like writers try to find ways to keep these kind of useless characters relevant, you know? And you know, Mirage is a fan favorite. Cypher became like I think back then folks hated him. They actually wanted to vote to kill him off, kind of like Jason Todd in Batman.
But isn't Cypher like a diplomat now on their whatever, and he speaks to everybody? He can speak to the planet and everything. They need
he's like he's Krakoan ambassador. So he has like a weird like symbiotic quasi romantic relationship with a tree.
It's interesting. I remember reading that in the first couple issues.
So yeah,
dope. Yeah, no, she was gonna get murked, and apparently
wait,
she didn't know the bear had footprints in snow.
Wait, Vic, so what's your cat rating?
I don't have a cat rating. We're gonna do that in one of the next episodes, right?
Yeah. No, you did it for Wolverine. You're those 3 like shot cats.
I know, but I only have so many abilities to like edit stuff while I'm actually live with y'all.
Right, so,
I decided to use this as what I wanted. This is how I think Carlos and me felt about this book. Like,
yeah.
We was out here like,
I ain't gonna come for New Mutants number 18.
Yeah,
because you know, we still got your book to go through. Let's be very clear about that.
You know, it is very clear, and let's talk about that. So apparently, I have been lacking in the things that I've read when I started reading comic books, and this is the first of 2 books, and I feel like I couldn't say the other book because I feel like it's just a scam to do it, and it was Young Avengers 1. I didn't want to jump into something like that because I feel like everybody knows Young Avengers 1, and I know that I went to this one, and I intended to go to this book when I saw it on shelves, so I was like, it was really an intention thing. I was like, oh, look at this cool Phoenix thing. I was like, all right. And one of my homies in college was like, oh, I'm working at this comic book store. You want to come with me, or you want me to get them for you? And I was like, yeah, let's go over there. And this was one of the ones I grabbed off the shelf. I'm pretty sure he even paid for me. So Phoenix Endsong is like a mini series 1 through 5. And I remember reading the entire thing and going back to reading it now. I don't think I remembered the book the way I should have. No, it was terrible. I'm just gonna start that now. The story in the first issue is kind of lacking. There are people in different places that I feel like they shouldn't be there, and just the concept of it was really funky. So for my 3 pages that I brought up, I have this one here, which I thought was friggin' ridiculous. So there's a embassy or a group of folks in space, and they're trying to end the Phoenix Force, and then it all fades to black. And then you get to this space where there's a little bug with a spark on it, and it starts flying around to where everyone is. And it finally gets here, and she's like, oh, Scott, I want Scott. And then out of nowhere, she jumps into my man's brain looking for him and shoots all these images of the history of Scott and Jean Grey, and blam, while he's sleeping with his glasses on. I don't see no hooks on him. I don't see no like nothing holding it. The dude's just sleeping in glasses, not moving, with his girl on him. So he just busts out one eye. And it's really funny because after this, he and Hank are having a conversation, and Hank's like, oh, it's my fault. I didn't make your glasses good enough. And it's like, bro, only one side broke. Like what happened there? And then Scott's response is, don't worry, some duct tape and some plaster and we'll fix the roof. I was like, bro, you just used some high level powers to blast a hole through the thing that holds it back and then right through the roof. And we know his optic blasts oftentimes increase in size. And I'm pretty sure this is an emotional moment that it would have increased, like just what I've seen, right? So I'm gonna go with is it physics? I don't know if it's physics or whatever. But so that happens. And then you start seeing everyone else going through these motions and figuring things out. And the Phoenix Force is finally going to Jean Grey's grave and going back into her body, which is also a weird thing to me because the corpse is talking. Like the corpse and the Phoenix Force are having a conversation at this point, and I'm like, wait a minute, how is that possible? So like the corpse is coming out. Jean Grey's powers are still so strong that when the Phoenix Force is coming into her as a freaking dead body, she can still scream no. And I was like, that's really interesting. And I don't know if it was an oversight or what, but Greg Pak gonna have to go back on this one and be mad at me later if anyone ever shares this with him. That's on him. And then the last one that I had was, of course, she's gonna come out and go to my man Logan, who for some reason everyone is asleep in the middle of the night. Hank's in his lab like a scientist is, singing "Ain't No Mountain High Enough." But like this dude's all being melancholy, sitting in the same field where Jean Grey is about to be resurrected, and he's like, "Oh, this must be a dream, but you're never naked in my dreams." And I'm like, "Wait, what? Are you only naked in my dreams?" It was like, okay, cool. And then she like manifests her costume, and then he's like, "Oh, don't make me do this again. Have Scott deal with your bullshit." And then he's like, he dips, and that was it. And it was like, all right, cool. So then it ends with the folk going back in space. You didn't kill the Phoenix Force. Let's find out what's gonna happen in the next 4 issues. Yeah, no, I was in college when I read it. I'm sorry. I have nothing else to say. I should have been way more influenced by stuff, and I think that's what made me move to reading more indie comics, and I was going into the Image, the Dark Horse. I still remember reading things like Welcome to Tranquility and Fell, and some things that won Eisenhower Awards, and that's probably why I forgot this storyline. So, and this is what I get for that. Time's up.
Yeah, this was definitely an interesting one. This might have been, I mean, it was like 2005 or whatever, something like that. So obviously you could tell my first book, 82 or whatever. The New Mutants book, also in the 80s. This was the one in the 2000s, and you can tell it was from the 2000s, right? It had that feel to it. But it was yeah, it was definitely interesting, to say the least. The whole them tracking the Phoenix Force, saying that it's weakened and we can get it, and they're like, dude, just because it's weakened doesn't mean that, it's reincarnate itself and stuff like that, and it's always meant to like resurrect and everything. And yeah, the whole lightning bug thing or whatever the hell, going around just talking to random people, and I was like, okay. It didn't know what the hell it was doing. It was looking for somebody, and it was like, oh, I remember this, and I remember this, and it's like, sure. So that was a little odd and stuff like that. The artwork was okay. I mean, I don't mind Greg Land. He's had some work that was pretty good. I mean, I don't mind. I kind of liked him more when he was like on DC and Birds of Prey and stuff like that, and when he was doing that. But I don't mind his artwork. It was okay. But yeah, the storyline was just a little. It was just weird. The bouncing around from like the guys in space trying to look for this thing, and then they come in here and Wolverine just being Wolverine in the middle of the woods for no reason, and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a little odd. You had the whole Scott at the time with Emma Frost and that whole thing. So if you didn't know what was going on in the story, you're like, the hell is Scott doing with Emma Frost? And like, okay, sure. But yeah, it was one of those books where maybe if I read it back then, I'd probably be like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll continue reading it. Obviously, reading it now, it doesn't just have that same panache or whatever. Like it doesn't hold up to other stories and stuff like that. So like if I did like read this one, it's like this one might be one that I put on the back burner and maybe like read something else and then maybe come back to this. But I mean, if you're an X-Men fan, then you probably would have been like, I don't give a shit. I'm gonna finish reading it. I want to see what happens. But if you're not and you're just like, oh, you just kind of jumped into it and you saw the cover like you did and like, oh, this is a pretty cool cover. Let me check it out. And then it's like, yeah, I got. You know what I mean? Something like that. But
I really got. I went and bought the variant covers. I bought 2 copies of every. I was like, this is gonna be a hit. Nope, trash.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. 2000s. It was. You really had to pick and choose.
Yeah.
For me, so I remember contextually where this storyline fit in the X-Men universe. It was, I think, a few years, maybe like a couple years after Jean Grey was killed off at the end of Grant Morrison's X-Men run. Mm-hmm. And in that run, he was trying to, I think, build off of what Chris Claremont had done with Jean Grey, where Chris had established a relationship between Jean and Phoenix that was almost inseparable. There were times where, like, they would say like Jean is Phoenix and Phoenix is Jean. And Morrison tried to do the same thing where he established this really, sort of like deep, sort of spiritual relationship, if you will. And so I remember this book because they had killed Jean Grey off. And it was one of those things where they were teasing her return. Marvel was good for that shit back then. Marvel would like tease shit and be like, this is the book that will change everything forever. And, they teased Jean's return. And by the end of this book, this series, she's not back, right? I think this was also the start for me of where things with the Phoenix Force got super complicated. Because I think, if you remember, Claremont's original storyline, Jean was Phoenix. That was her power. That was her, right? And then Marvel and its editorial influences said, no, we're gonna change it so it's a separate entity, and that's how the Phoenix was born. Claremont has tried to repair that by saying, even though it's the Phoenix Force, that the Phoenix Force and Jean still have a symbiotic dual relationship. But this is where I think things get really complicated because Grant Morrison at the end of his X-Men run, he established like the Phoenix Corps. So it's like, at the end of his run, Jean was, there was one particular panel where there were a bunch of Phoenixes, including Quentin Quire, and basically saying like, each of these like high order telepaths could tap into the Phoenix. And we see that picking up in this series as well, where I think the next issue, Quentin is like, well, we'll see what the Phoenix can do for me. And this is where I think this was like the beginning of the complication of Phoenix. Cause like now when you look at it, if you're reading like present day Marvel, you've got Avengers 1 million BC where they have like a prehistoric Phoenix, right? Whereas, previous continuity, if you look at old issues of Excalibur, previous continuity had established that Phoenix had come to Earth, I think, well after that. And so we were meant to believe that another human host, millennia after Avengers 1 million BC, was the first human encounter with the Phoenix, right? Anyway, all that being said, for me, I was reading this issue, took me back to when I first read it when it first came out, and I was as confused by those first couple panels back then as I was back then. The scene where like, when the Shi'ar say that we've scattered the Phoenix Force, I'm like, where? I didn't see that, right? Like, you see the Firebird on the first page, and it's a pretty splashy first page, and then the Shi'ar say, oh, we've scattered it. I'm like, is that what happened? Because like the next thing you know, the page is black. And you see the black lettering. Where am I, bitch? Where am I? Because I don't know what the fuck just happened, right? And then right, like Los and Vic, like the Firefly bouncing around. Like honestly, all that dialogue was repetitive, and they could have just like cut all of that out and maybe shown like a few panels with no words of the Firefly kind of meandering, trying to find its source. They could have did away with all that dialogue. Scott and Emma, I mean they whatever. People will argue that Scott and Emma are a representation of a sort of real relationship, whereas like Jean and Scott were unhealthy because it was like they had these idealistic visions of who they were to each other, whereas Emma accepted Scott for who she was and vice versa. or Emma accepted Scott for who he was and vice versa. And
Except
so
for in this, he was like, I don't need you to think about your old bitch. She was like,
well, but
shut
she
that down. I
well,
read your
yeah, well,
thing.
and Emma even says, I think in this issue, she was like, well, you know, one thing it's apparent that you're thinking about your one true love who isn't me, right?
Yeah.
And we know from like prior issues and issues after this that Emma did love Scott, you know, but I think Emma was also realistic to be like, yo, like I love Scott. I don't know that he loves me the way that I love him, you know.
Isn't it in this series? And I don't remember because I'm not gonna read the next 4 again. But I know she makes like this chrysalis that they have love in with his glasses, right?
They have sex. Like, they have sex. Weird. Like so. Beast. I'll tell you because I still remember this shit. Beast builds a machine. I do. I remember all fucking 5 issues. Beast builds a machine to contain the Phoenix Force, and then something happens where like, apparently the reason why Phoenix is looking for Scott is because his optic blasts can make her strong again. So the Phoenix. They managed to contain the Phoenix in Emma Frost, but she's not strong enough to, you know, contain the Phoenix. And so they throw her in this machine that Beast creates. And like, while they're in there, Cyclops goes in there to continue to charge up the Phoenix with his optic blast, which is probably like a metaphor for sex. Like he's fucking her with his eye blast, right? Like, and they're in this like love unit of like, you know, him like literally pounding her with his blast, right? Wild. And then
I remember just being like,
it's weird. And the end of the story, the very end of it is like Jean saying goodbye to Cyclops, and she goes off to the white hot room. And it's just so, you know, for me, it's where shit got messy with the Phoenix Force, and now we have what we have today. I still love the concept of the Phoenix Force, and you know, its relationship to Jean Grey. I think it should have remained an X-Men thing, but now it's all over Marvel. And like, you know, Thor was, you know, has a relationship to the Phoenix Force because of, you know, Gaia, and like, you know, what, like she's like his surrogate mom or some shit. And then you have all these different Phoenix hosts.
Yeah.
Like it's like the Green Lantern Corps, but Phoenix.
And not weak to yellow. No, yeah, it was interesting. My favorite thing about picking up this off the shelf was that I started reading other things that were better, and I was able to grab NYX and the House of M and read those series, and it was all good. But you know, this is how I feel about myself now. I feel like I am reading shit, and I'm in the trash with this one, so I lose this round. My origin story sucks. So.
Yeah, but you know what? Like you said, it was a springboard to other better things. You know what I mean? So you know, as long as you stayed with it, right? It wasn't one of those things where it was so trash that you were just like, the hell with this medium. This is, if all comic books are like this, then I'm out. You know what I mean? So you know, at least you were like, you know what? I'm willing to try something else. Let me read this other book. Let me read this, and you know, it got you like, okay, that wasn't the right spot for me, but this is right. Those indie books.
I'm starting to think I had terrible taste when I was younger.
Like, well, no, I think you would have had terrible taste if you decided that you loved this series and you wanted to pick up the sequel, Phoenix War Song, which had the Phoenix possess the Cuckoo Five, or the what do they call it? The Cuckoos, the Stepford Cuckoos. They all had the and then it turned out like they contained the Phoenix inside their diamond hearts, some wacky like Sailor Moon type shit, like. If you had said that was your like, yo, I love this series, I'd be like, Vic, we need to find another partner for this work because I don't know that I can trust. But you know, you've also schooled me on some good shit, so I think
I'm about to end the broadcast. I will stop this right now. I will stop it if you kick me out. I'll stop it. No, no, this is good. I'm glad we all got to read these things. I'm glad we got to share. We're coming up on an hour. I think it's probably time to wrap it up because most people's view time of this will probably be 27 seconds. But what's happening next? Los, you have a more prominent channel and you're always doing something. What's next for you?
So what's next for me is I'll probably have some unboxings coming up. I got some books coming back from CGC soon. So I'll probably be doing that. I believe I have probably like a cleaning and press video that I did on a book. So I'm probably going to release that when I get some time to like edit it. And you know, waiting for our next episode of Bodega Cats.
No, this is gonna be good. This is going to be good. Jose, what's happening next?
What's happening next? Yeah, I'm just, I'm crashing y'all's party. You know what I'm saying? Y'all, I'm like the one that just like shows up. I ain't bring no food to the cookout. I ain't bring no paper plates. I show up, I eat, I dip. So I'm just looking forward to conversing with you two brothers again about some shit about comics and currently reading. I mentioned Avengers 1 million BC. Read that. Just finished a really interesting storyline. I've shared this with you about the New Mutants with the transfer of power from Ileana to the Goblin Queen, who's come back to life recently. And so the book itself has been a really interesting metaphor for people's childhood, people's traumas, and how they manifest. And so that particular arc was great. Looking for some other reads. So always open to even some independent ones because I admittedly have been mostly Marvel and DC, but always open to some new reads. And so looking to y'all for some suggestions as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and I don't know what's next for me either. I like that you share what you're reading because I'm almost done with Bitter Root. Finally got a chance to read that. We know that might be something coming out in the future. And if it is Regina King, I love what she has been doing lately, especially the Watchmen on HBO. I thought that was freaking fantabulous, and this kind of fits into that same dynamic. But yeah, I got a ton of stuff that I haven't read. I got a ton of stuff sitting around here. Like if y'all saw the sides of this, there's a bunch of Digimon cards and like unbagged and boarded comic books. Like people would be mad at me. Like shit is everywhere. Like even in my cases, they're not bagged and boarded. Yeah, it's terrible. But I'm hoping that we could keep doing this. I know we got some great ideas for some shows coming up, and I know that I'm not even gonna spoil them now because we don't want to give somebody the heat and then they never get to see it. So we'll keep it on the wraps. We'll record it again. We might go live when we find some time. But how do we sign off? What do we do? I'm just gonna play this audio clip and I'm gonna end the broadcast. This is for everybody out there. Thanks for watching.
Do it.
Well, every time I come in your store, the cats sleep on the bread. Every time I come in the store, the cats sleep on the bread. You gonna tell me he live here? You know, like I go to another store.